Hardly had Matryona thought this when steps were heard on the threshold, and someone entered. Matryona stuck her needle into her work and went out into the passage. There she saw two men, Simon, and with him a man without a hat and wearing felt boots. Matryona noticed at once that her husband smelt of spirits. There now, he has been drinking, thought she. And when she saw that he was coatless, had only her jacket on, brought no parcel, stood there silent, and seemed ashamed, her heart was ready to break with disappointment. He has drunk the money, thought she, and has been on the spree with some good-for-nothing fellow whom he has brought home with him. Matryona let them pass into the hut, followed them in, and saw that the stranger was a young, slight man, wearing her husband's coat. There was no shirt to be seen under it, and he had no hat. Having entered, he stood neither moving nor raising his eyes, and Matryona thought, he must be a bad man. He's afraid. Matryona frowned and stood beside the oven, looking to see what they would do. Simon took off his cap and sat down on the bench, as if things were all right. Come, Matryona, if supper is ready, let us have some. Matryona muttered something to herself and did not move, but stayed where she was, by the oven. She looked first at the one and then at the other of them, and only shook her head. Simon saw that his wife was annoyed, but tried to pass it off, pretending not to notice anything. He took the stranger by the arm. "Sit down, friend," said he, "and let us have some supper." The stranger sat down on the bench. "Haven't you cooked anything for us?" said Simon. Matryona's anger boiled over. "I've cooked, but not for you. It seems to me you have drunk your wits away. You went to buy a sheepskin coat, but come home without so much as the coat you had on, and bring a naked vagabond home with you. I have no supper for drunkards like you." "That's enough, Matryona. Don't wag your tongue without reason. You had better ask what sort of man. And you tell me what you've done with the money." Simon found the pocket of the jacket, drew out the 3-ruble note, and unfolded it. "Here is the money. Trifonov did not pay, but promises to pay soon." Matryona got still more angry. He had bought no sheepskins, but had put his only coat on some naked fellow, and had even brought him to their house. She snatched up the note from the table, took it to put away in safety, and said, "I have no supper for you. We can't feed all the naked drunkards in the world. There now, Matryona, hold your tongue a bit. First hear what a man has to say." "Much wisdom I shall hear from a drunken fool. I was right in not wanting to marry you, a drunkard. The linen my mother gave me you drank, and now you've been to buy a coat, and have drunk it too." Simon tried to explain to his wife that he had only spent 20 kopecks, tried to tell how he had found the man, but Matryona would not let him get a word in. She talked 19 to the dozen, and dragged in things that had happened 10 years before. Matryona talked and talked, and at last she flew at Simon and seized him by the sleeve. "Give me my jacket. It is the only one I have, and you must needs take it from me and wear it yourself. Give it here, you mangy dog, and may the devil take you." Simon began to pull off the jacket and turned a sleeve of it inside out. Matryona seized the jacket, and it burst its seams. She snatched it up, threw it over her head, and went to the door. She meant to go out, but stopped undecided. She wanted to work off her anger, but she also wanted to learn what sort of a man the stranger was.
Matryona stopped and said, "If he were a good man, he would not be naked. Why, he hasn't even a shirt on him. If he were all right, you would say where you came across the fellow." "That's just what I am trying to tell you," said Simon. "As I came to the shrine, I saw him sitting all naked and frozen. It isn't quite the weather to sit about naked. God sent me to him, or he would have perished. What was I to do? How do we know what may have happened to him? So I took him, clothed him, and brought him along." "Don't be so angry, Matryona. It is a sin."
Angry words rose to Matryona's lips, but she looked at the stranger and was silent. He sat on the edge of the bench, motionless, his hands folded on his knees, his head drooping on his breast, his eyes closed, and his brows knit as if in pain. Matryona was silent, and Simon said, "Matryona, have you no love of God?" Matryona heard these words, and as she looked at the stranger, suddenly her heart softened towards him. She came back from the door, and going to the oven, she got out the supper. Setting a cup on the table, she poured out some kvass. Then she brought out the last piece of bread and set out a knife and spoons. "Eat, if you want to," said she. Simon drew the stranger to the table. "Take your place, young man," said he. Simon cut the bread, crumbled it into the broth, and they began to eat. Matryona sat at the corner of the table, resting her head on her hand and looking at the stranger. And Matryona was touched with pity for the stranger and began to feel fond of him. And at once, the stranger's face lit up. His brows were no longer bent. He raised his eyes and smiled at Matryona. When they had finished supper, the woman cleared away the things and began questioning the stranger. "Where are you from?" said she. "I am not from these parts. But how did you come to be on the road?" "I may not tell. Did someone rob you?" "God punished me. And you were lying there naked?" "Yes, naked and freezing. Simon saw me and had pity on me. He took off his coat, put it on me, and brought me here. And you have fed me, given me drink, and shown pity on me. God will reward you." Matryona rose, took from the window Simon's old shirt she had been patching, and gave it to the stranger. She also brought out a pair of trousers for him. "There," said she, "I see you have no shirt. Put this on and lie down where you please, in the loft or on the oven." The stranger took off the coat, put on the shirt, and lay down in the loft. Matryona put out the candle, took the coat, and climbed to where her husband lay. Matryona drew the skirts of the coat over her and lay down, but could not sleep. She could not get the stranger out of her mind. When she remembered that he had eaten their last piece of bread and that there was none for tomorrow, and thought of the shirt and trousers she had given away, she felt grieved. But when she remembered how he had smiled, her heart was glad. Long did Matryona lie awake, and she noticed that Simon also was awake. He drew the coat towards him. "Simon!" "Well, you have had the last of the bread, and I have not put any to rise. I don't know what we shall do tomorrow. Perhaps I can borrow some of neighbor Martha. If we're alive, we shall find something to eat." The woman lay still a while, and then said, "He seems a good man, but why does he not tell us who he is? I suppose he has his reasons." "Simon, well, we give. But why does nobody give us anything?" Simon did not know what to say, so he only said, "Let us stop talking," and turned over and went to sleep. In the morning, Simon awoke. The children were still asleep. His wife had gone to the neighbors to borrow some bread. The stranger alone was sitting on the bench, dressed in the old shirt and trousers, and looking upwards. His face was brighter than it had been the day before. Simon said to him, "Well, friend, the belly wants bread, and the naked body clothes. One has to work for a living. What work do you know?" "I do not know any." This surprised Simon, but he said, "Men who want to learn can learn anything." Men work, and I will work also. What is your name? Michael. Well, Michael, if you don't wish to talk about yourself, that is your own affair. But you'll have to earn a living for yourself. If you will work as I tell you, I will give you food and shelter. May God reward you. I will learn. Show me what to do. Simon took yarn, put it round his thumb, and began to twist it. It is easy enough, see? Michael watched him put some yarn round his own thumbs in the same way, caught the knack, and twisted the yarn also. Then Simon showed him how to wax the thread. This also Michael mastered. Next, Simon showed him how to twist the bristle in and how to sew. And this too, Michael learned at once. Whatever Simon showed him, he understood at once, and after 3 days, he worked as if he had sewn boots all his life. He worked without stopping and ate little. When work was over, he sat silently, looking upwards. He hardly went into the street, spoke only when necessary, and neither joked nor laughed. They never saw him smile, except that first evening when Matryona gave them supper. Day by day, and week by week, the year went round. Michael lived and worked with Simon. His fame spread, till people said that no one sewed boots so neatly and strongly as Simon's workman, Michael. And from all the district round, people came to Simon for their boots, and he began to be well off. One winter day, as Simon and Michael sat working, a carriage on sledge runners, with 3 horses and with bells, drove up to the hut. They looked out of the window. The carriage stopped at their door. A fine servant jumped down from the box and opened the door. A gentleman in a fur coat got out and walked up to Simon's hut. Up jumped Matryona and opened the door wide. The gentleman stooped to enter the hut, and when he drew himself up again, his head nearly reached the ceiling, and he seemed quite to fill his end of the room.